It's been a terrible year for my YouTube channel, but an amazing year for music. A year for music that is quite frankly going down in the history books. And today I just want to give my thoughts on pretty much everything that happened this year. So I'm going to be breaking down my favourite albums, favourite songs, favourite verses, favourite moments, giving you my 2024 MVP and all things alike in just one big video. So stick around, I'm sure you'll find some great new music for you to check out and reminisce about this great year with me. And if I don't mention an album you love, get over it, don't cry. So let's get started with Moment of the Year. Look, there was only going to be one winner here for me, and Kendrick Lamar's pop-out show in LA is what we'll look back on in years to come. You cannot mention 2024 without mentioning Kendrick Lamar's name. And watching his victory lap during that show was genuinely insane. Getting everyone on stage, the pop when Euphoria started, bringing Dr. Dre out. I mean, even the pre-show bringing guests out like Tyler and Roddy Ricch was a huge moment. It just felt like the West Coast was well and truly unified for just that one night. And it's a night that will live long in the memory of pretty much every hip-hop fan, unless you're a Drake fan. And if you follow me on Twitter, then you'd know I was asleep during pretty much every single drop of the beef except for Euphoria, so I missed out on a lot of crazy reactions, but what a crazy time it was. And no matter who you think won, you just can't deny the magnitude of the whole situation. Like, Drake really lost a beef despite releasing a wild track himself with Family Matters. It was chess move after chess move from Kendrick, and the biggest song of the year being Kendrick Lamar calling Drake a PDF file was not on my 2024 bingo card. And while we're here, I may as well move on to MVP of the year, and once again it's Kendrick Lamar. I literally had written a whole script out about how he was the MVP without even dropping an album, and well, he literally just dropped his latest album and that cements his position as MVP even more. From winning possibly the biggest rap beef in history, if not the second, having a victory lap at the pop out, multiple Grammy nominations, the biggest rap song of the year, the Super Bowl announcement, and now his latest album, this year is Kendrick Lamar's year. And that will reflect in history, just how 2008 was Wayne's year, 2010 was Kanye's, 03 was 50 Cent's. I think the only other contender for MVP is Charlie XCX, who took over the pop world this year with Brat, but 2024 just definitely belonged to Kendrick Lamar. In terms of the biggest surprise of the year, it's got to be Doechii to me. I'm sure I'll speak about her album later in the video, but it feels like she's had just such a wild rise this year. So much of a rise that you have people calling her an industry plant. But the music speaks for itself, and it's also the personality that she's built up in her stage performances too. She's a true artist and performer, and she's added so much to this year, and also got huge co-signs from the likes of Kendrick, obviously the Tyler feature, and a Grammy-nominated mixtape. Right, let's quickly speak about some albums I was disappointed with this year. Kanye is my favourite artist of all time, but both Vultures 1 and 2 absolutely stink, and I'm so glad that the Vultures era is seemingly coming to an end, because there's absolutely nothing rewarding about either of those albums. I'm also a huge fan of Little Simz, but her record this year just hasn't done anything for me, and in my opinion is a pretty big downgrade compared to her last few projects. And finally, I don't think Might Delete Later was a great precursor to The Fall Off. Despite it having a couple of decent tracks on there, I'm still confident that Cole can drop an amazing record. But yeah, Might Delete Later just hasn't moved me at all. Right, how about we move on and speak about some of my favourite albums to drop this year. Just a pre-warning, this video is being recorded in very early December, and we might get some crazy drops to finish the year off, so if we get a miracle Frank Ocean or Playboi Carti drop, forgive me. Also, Smino's album's dropping in a week or two, so that won't be here, but I'd fully expect that to be up there with the best of the year. Right, should we fly through some of my favourite records of the year in record time? I've listened to over 130 albums to release this year, so I've got to get through them quick. Honourable mentions, let's go. Fearless Movement by Kamasi Washington is my favourite jazz record of the year. Mercy Non Mercy by El Kustu, Revelator by Elucid, Cowboy Carter by Beyonce, Lived and Born by Clown Cat and Some Monday was a great showing from both artists. AJ Suede dropped a couple of great releases too. In Waves by Jamie XX and Timeless by Kate Renada both had some of my favourite dance tracks of the entire year. Shout out to 2 UK records with Silence Is Loud and Conglomerate, which has kind of taken the UK by storm in the final few months of the year. DP dropped a wonderful garage/jungle hybrid album with Syntax, 11 by Westside Gun, Hardstone Psycho by Don Toliver, 070 Shake dropped another great album. The Hunger Era by D2X just threw me back to the early 2010s with that mixtape feel and comic book sound. LL Cool J and Q-Tip killed it on the Force. Yeet surprised me with 2093 and Lifestyle, and while Soulberger may not be Absol's best work to date, there are moments on that record that blew me away. Penalty of Leadership by Boldy James deserves a shout too. Both Mixtape Pluto and We Still Don't Trust You were amazing. I want to give a shout out to Pink Sifu for his Got Food at the Crib series. Sky Zoo's album was really good too, but I just haven't had enough time to sit with it. And finally, the vinyl exclusive Black Label by Armand Hammer was really solid. Finally, so how about we get into the real big hitters of the year with a top 25. Anyway, in at 25th I've got Bruiser Wolf with My Story Got Stories. If you haven't heard Bruiser Wolf before, then you're in for a treat. He's just one of a kind, hilarious punchlines, unique delivery, but also some real dark moments on the project. In at 24th I've got Charm by Clairo. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I'm the biggest Clairo fan. In fact, this year was the first time I actually listened to her music. But the instrumentation on this album, partnered with that soft tone of voice, just works a charm. No pun intended. Sexy to Someone and Thank You are the highlights on this one for me. In at 23rd I've got That Green album. Yeah, you just couldn't escape Brat this year, and I kind of understand why. It isn't perfect. In fact, I think it's actually got quite a few flaws. But the whole soundscape of the album is amazing. Songs like Talk Talk, Von Dutch, 360 are nothing short of pop anthems at this point. Tracks like So I are heartbreaking, and I think we should all unanimously agree that this is one of the better pop releases of this year. In at 22nd I've got TDE's very own Sir with the album Heavy. I actually think this album is better than the well-received Chasing Summer, which means it's Sir's best work to date. The melodies on this thing are beautiful, feature placements are perfect, whether it be Isaiah Rashad, Anderson .Paak or Absol. The sequencing is borderline flawless for me, and Nothing Even Matters might be my favourite R&B song of the year. In at 21st I've got Rhapsody with possibly our most personal album to date, Please Don't Cry. I'm a huge fan of Layla's Wisdom and Eve especially, but I think this is now at the top spot in her catalogue. Rhapsody has constantly pushed the boundaries of what a female MC can be, and songs like He Shot Me, Back in My Bag, Asteroids continue to put Rhapsody in the path of being the greatest female rapper ever live. In fact, just one of the most complete rappers of the last decade or so. In at 20th I've got Kofi Stone with A Man After God's Own Heart. Personally, I think this is the best record to come out of the UK this year. Actually, just one of my favourites of the 20s so far. Just an amazing commentary on religion, trauma, social injustices, love, relationships, self-development. The sampling on this thing is excellent, so are some of the vocal bridges. A Mother's Love is almost tear-jerking, and it's just a really well executed album throughout, and I definitely recommend this one to everyone. Right, into 19th now, I've got the breakthrough artist of the year, Doechii with Alligator Bites Never Heal. It feels like Doechii just came from nowhere this year, but she's been such a great addition to 2024. And this tape is so refreshing. I'm finding new things I love about it with every listen. Doechii just has character. An addictive way and unique way of delivering every line. Just listen to Denial is a River and tell me that isn't something you needed to hear this year. Just a wonderful mixtape, and I can't wait to see what she brings next year. 18th now, and I've got Common and Pete Rock's Auditorium. I actually wasn't huge on this album at first, but it's grown on me massively. In essence, it's just two legends showing off. Pete Rock is a genius behind the boards and remains a sampler unlike any other, and Common's writing style and the little punchlines he always does just match it perfectly. Next up I've got Freddie Gibbs with You Only Die Once, and I don't have too much to say here apart from it's just so solid and super consistent from Gibbs. The flows are once again on point, stepped outside his boundaries with different producers, and it's his best non-collab album to date. I would argue. Right, into 16th now, I've got Blue and Exile with Love the Ominous World. Blue and Exile are really one of the greatest rapper-producer combos we've ever seen in hip-hop, and this is a beautiful addition to their previous work. Into 15th now, I've got one of my most played releases of the year, and that's Pinball from Mike. It's so snappy and short, so easy to listen to, great production from Tony Zeltzer, and I just loved hearing Mike on this sound. It may not be his most personal or in-depth work to date, but it just slaps. Next up in 14th, I've got Still Praying. This is everything I could have wanted from a Westside Gunn album in 2024. He abandoned the trap sound that was found on his 2023 album and instead stuck with the formula that works for him. Soul samples and great feature placements. And yeah, it culminated in his best work since Peace Fly God. Up next in 13th, I've got No Worries and Why Lord. A lot of people were disappointed with this release, and honestly, I don't quite understand why. It's a pretty incredible sequel to me. Maybe people wanted more songs like Suede, but this album has a lot more heartbreak and subject matter, and Pac and Knowledge obviously bring their A game. In at 12th, I've got the most impactful album of the year, We Don't Trust You. Yeah, imagine if this album never came out. Without the Like That verse, we wouldn't have the entire beef. So the impact is undeniable. And it's probably the best Future album since The Wizard. Metro came through with some great beat selections, especially the soul flip on Everyday Hustle. And the opening track is still probably my favourite this year. In at 11th, I've got Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q, which seems so harsh not to have it in my top 10 because it truly is amazing, but it just goes to show how stacked this year has been. Q experimented a lot with the sound of this album, and that means it's divided a lot of opinions, but it paid off. You have deeply personal tracks like Blue Slides, some of the best bangers of the year like Pop, and then 4 with Absol, which has these crazy drums that drive the track in an almost drum and bass sound. I'm not going to put it on the level of a Blank Face or an Oxymoron, but I do believe this was a snub from the Grammys this year. Right, now into the top 10, and at 10 I've got the late great Car with The Thief Next to Jesus. This one hurts. Some of my first YouTube videos were breaking down his magnificent bodies of work, and he's one of my favourite writers of all time, so his passing hit me hard, especially considering I got some vinyl signed by him literally 2 weeks before his unfortunate passing. But this is just a wonderful album to end with. Questions of mortality are all through this thing, which makes it a bit of a tough listen now. But the gospel samples create the perfect palette for Car to just explore the religious themes once again. It's just another great body of work. Right, into 9th now, and I've got Lupe Fiasco with Samurai. Personally, this is his best album since 2015, and that's due to the sequencing. Just 8 tracks, exploring a loose concept of Amy Winehouse being a battle rapper. But yeah, I won't dive too much into that. And one thing that stands out on this album for me is the hooks, which usually isn't the standout on any Lupe album. The hook on the title track, the hook on Mumble Rap, Palaces, Till Eternity, amazing, and are all earworms. Pair that with Lupe's complex writing and you just get a great record, and one that is a lot more easily digestible than a lot of his other work. Up next in 8th, I've got Denzel Curry with King of the Mischievous South. He took that 3-6 Mafia sound and ran with it. The influence is clear, but he executes it so well, and I just think this sound suits Denzel Curry. Melt My Eyes is still my favourite work from him due to the introspection on that record, but this is hit after hit after hit after hit. Those feature placements too, perfect. In at 7th, the West Coast continues to dominate 2024, as I have Blue and Evidence's Los Angeles. Now, if you don't know Blue, he's one of the hardest working and consistent rappers in the underground, and has been for the last 20 years. Los Angeles is a great depiction of LA and the harsh reality of living there, and Blue's imagery is so good on this record, and Evidence does a great job of providing the backdrop with a wide range of instrumentals that makes the album almost feel like a double album, with a switch halfway through the record from hard-hitting drums to more soul-driven tracks. Right, in at 6th, I've probably got the hardest hitting release of the year, for me at least, and that's Marvy's Shadowbox. This is an album that can take me to a pretty rough place. The content is his darkest to date, and honestly, he doesn't really find a resolution come the end of the record, so it's tough to get through. Marvy puts his heart and his pain out there for the listener, and I'm sure a lot of it we can relate to despite his experience being singular. The production is dreary, but also harmonious at times, but it complements the subject matter, and Marvy's writing is his best to date. The opening lines on The Giver is up there with my favourite lines of the entire year. This album is just about Marvy persevering through life's downs, and it culminates in a heartbreaking release. Right, into the very best releases of the year now with my top 5, and in at 5th I've got Mac Homie with Rich Ass Haitian. I feel like this has been Mac's biggest release to date, and that's for good measure. Whether it was the lead single with Kate Trinada, or Mac finally involving himself in a proper album rollout with the media, he's definitely gained a lot of exposure due to this album. The sequencing is perfect, and do I even need to say anything about Mac's rapping ability? I love this album so much that I spent a combined $800 on 2 different vinyl versions. That tells you all you need to know. Right, into 4th now, and I've got JPEG Mafia with I Laid My Life Down For You. Yeah, he just continues on this almost decade-long crazy run that he's on right now. In any other year, this could easily take the #1 spot. What's crazy is this probably has the best production of Peggy's entire career. It got super experimental. Just listen to that Black History beat with a Future sample and the breakdown in the second half. Or what about Ex-Military with that famous Wu-Tang sample? Or Either On or Off the Drugs with that AI Future flip? I just absolutely love everything on here. The first half of Don't Put Anything on the Bible is ethereal. I Recovered From This is a wonderful track to end the album with. Sin Miedo is a banger of all proportions. Yeah, this album is incredibly unlucky and miss out on the top 3, but it just goes to show how stacked this year has been. Right, well, how about we get into the top 3? In at 3rd place, I've got Tyler the Creator with Chromacopia. In terms of themes of an album, this is probably my favourite of the year. Once again, Tyler has grew as an artist. Look no further than a track such as Like Him. That is just such a potent track. Or how about Tyler's final verse on Take Your Mask Off? How about just opening an album with Saint Chroma, which is an absolutely insane intro. The bridge on Judge Judy, Wayne's verse on Sticky, the double meaning behind I Killed You. I could wax lyrical about this album for another 20 minutes, but in reality it's just another sign of artistic development from Tyler, and a continuation of him pushing boundaries within mainstream hip hop music. In terms of a complete album experience, music videos and rollout included, I'm not sure it gets better than this in 2024. Now, choosing between these top 2 is probably the hardest decision I've made all year, and I debated it for days and days, but I finally come to a conclusion. And in 2nd place, I've got Kendrick Lamar with GNX. Yeah, I'm sure most expected this to come in first, but I've got something that just tops it. Anyway, GNX is nothing short of a masterpiece, and that surprise drop will be something I always remember. Kendrick just comes through on this record with this fuck you attitude. Quite literally the opposite of Mr. Morale, and he brought the West Coast energy with him. It's just a continuation of the victory lap that he started earlier in the year. There's just so many highlights on this thing: the one mic interpolation, the double narrative that drives Gloria, Luther being one of Kendrick's best melodic cuts to date, Part 6 diving into the early years of TDE, or how about the West Coast bangers like Squabble Up, TV Off, or Hey Now. Don't even get me started on Reincarnated and the amount of layers behind that song. It cemented his place as 2024 MVP, and I don't think much more needs to be said. But it still isn't top. And if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know how much I love this album that I've got in first place. And that album is Dark Times by Vince Staples. I know a lot of people disagree with me and will say Big Fish Theory, but this is Vince Staples' best album to date, and a perfect culmination of the sound he's been exploring over the last few projects, just realised to its full potential. It's somber, it's eerie, it's heartfelt. But then you have moments like Little Homies that sounds directly off Big Fish Theory with a house production tendencies. The final verse on Freeman floors me every time. A Two-Face should have been a hit. The sample on Black and Blue is perfectly executed. Or how about the hook on Government Cheese? The album feels desperate at points, like Vince is stuck between two different worlds. I genuinely believe this is one of the most complete hip-hop records of the decade, and it doesn't overstay its welcome either, coming in at just 35 minutes. And seeing this album perform live just multiplied my love for it even more. But yeah, Dark Times is just absolutely my favourite record of 2024. Well, that's pretty much a roundup of all the music I loved in 2024. It's been a year I'll never forget, especially in terms of the whole Kendrick and Drake related stuff. It just felt like there was a fire underneath everyone's bellies this year, and I hope that flame doesn't burn out in 2025. 2024 music doesn't exist, so maybe we get the Carti album in 2025. Maybe. Probably not. But yeah, I hope 2025 brings just as much good music as we got this year, and I promise to start uploading again next year. I promise. I kinda neglected my YouTube this year, but I really want to fix that in the coming months, so I'll see you in the next one.